Welcome to A Celtic World, the YouTube channel for Celtic fans and adorable little doggies all over the world.
Aye.
Yes, you're very welcome back. Let me just quickly show the times as we often do, just so you know when we're on, where you are. That's what it currently looks like. There's been one change. Oh no, I haven't updated it. Pittsburgh should say 5:30 now because, as Dano was just discussing with me, the US has just changed its own daylight savings.
Yeah. The medieval clock trick. Yeah.
It's annoying, isn't it? It's changing at
so
different times
stupid.
all over the world.
It is
Nothing changes for us.
Stupid. It's ridiculous.
Well, what's not ridiculous is that we have some amazing guests lined up to generate a bit of interest for you over the international period. So just because the games stop doesn't mean we stop providing you with top quality Celtic-related entertainment. Absolutely free, by the way. No ads, no sponsors, no plugging other activities. Just pure Celtic content put together by Celtic fans just like you. So thank you for subscribing, of course. If you haven't, surely that's enough to convince you to tap subscribe with your finger or click it with your mouse. Not a very big ask, I think. It's fair to say. So, From the Mundane to Madrid is the title of today's show. Nothing mundane about our lineup today. Currently, we're at 3 people. We may become 4. But let's say hello to those who are here on time. David, how you doing in Malaysia? KL.
Doing just great, thank you.
Bye.
And all the way in South Korea, Dano with your doggy. Do you want to introduce us formally to your dog? Tell us how you're doing, how your doggy's doing.
We're good. We both watched the game together over the weekend. We went to the Flower Fest in this town called Hampyeong as well, which was pretty awesome. And things are good, man. Things are good from Dingwall to Madrid. Shouldn't be too big a difference, should it? I mean, we're gonna rock that, man. It'll be fine. But yeah, this is X-Man. I adopted him. He was living in a factory. Somebody bought him for like $1,500 and then abandoned him. He was living in a factory for 4 or 5 months. So
what's his name?
X-Man. We gave him he was filthy. He had never gotten a haircut. He was 8 months old. And we gave him a haircut and he had a little like gray X mark on his upper back. So
didn't
X-Man.
used to be called Twitter Man.
Slender Man. Yeah.
Here we have good mornings from Paddy Lavery, Street Shouter, and Frank Brennan, who's already in with the details. He talks about an overall very good 3-0 win against County, with Turnbull scoring at a very crucial time to give their 10 men a fatal psychological blow. And pleasing too that Turnbull's overall performance was better. Well, let's get into that very game at Frank's invitation. The Ross County game. So, first thing I suppose, David, to note was the number of changes to the starting lineup. How did you feel about that?
I wasn't overly surprised about the changes coming up because I think there's one eye on European games, but I think there's also, beyond Europe, I think there's an idea that we have to rotate because we've got heavy period of games coming up, leading up to Christmas and beyond. So I actually think it's not just about Europe. I think it's beyond then as well. And I thought from some of the players that's maybe been getting a bit of a stick, I thought they did actually pretty well. So no real surprises. I thought Home may have started from the beginning. That was the only one that I thought should have maybe been done. But other than that, no great surprises in there.
And Dano, who's swiveling in his chair rather distractingly there. Do you want to get us underway? Do you want to get us underway with the first half? First incident of the day, I guess, was Scales' disallowed goal. Jerry from A Celtic World had a bet on that. Did you see 80-1 were his odds? And he had a pretty hefty bet. And he must have been jumping for joy, only to be brought crashing down to earth when the decision was made. Go ahead.
It's the same old story every time, isn't it? VAR just ruins the party every time. I mean, is it worth $50 to take that kind of punt? I think so. I think that was a pretty smart bet. Just to see.
Well, I wasn't going to give away how much he put down on it, but you just have. So yes, he had $50 on an 80-1 odds. So
it's
he would have
good.
been
It's good odds, man.
the
Well,
money.
yeah. And sorry to Jerry. I guess we're gonna have another Axom incident here on Kelly, but
You're going to
he
be.
was talking about it on social media, so I don't think he really cares. But yeah, I didn't really think that was a foul. I know my goggles are on, but where's the foul with it kind of flies over them anyways. I thought it was a goal. It should have stood. But yeah, as far as the starting lineup went, I don't think those players were put out there for free, like just as like fill-ins. They've all been playing really well, and I think every single one of them earned a start. I was surprised that Holm didn't start. I really wanted to see him get a start, but O and Yang and these guys, I think they've been, putting in their work at training, and I was happy to see him out there. I'd like to see a little more rotation. It's a heavy, heavy fixture list coming here and, later in the season. So,
Right. Well, look, let's go back to the incident there and let me play devil's advocate. What we all saw for sure was the defender's theatrics, arms, facial expression. He looked like one of the family, the family, that dad and his two sons in the UK who do those cheesy, annoying dances. I like all faces and jazz hands. He was a bit like that. And then, of course, he fell to the floor. He crumpled to the floor in a heap. So there was all of that stuff. But, O made no contact with the ball, but plenty of contact with the player. And he was up and over him. So are we sure it was that outrageous a decision, David?
No, I didn't think it was that outrageous, to be honest. I thought, given the way decisions are going these days, it can be... there's a bit of inconsistency, let's say that. I think there was a decision later in the game we'll come to, which was an offside decision, which I was really annoyed about because no way did I say it was. I was going to say that was offside because the ball had left Bernardo's foot. But the O incident, I don't think it was so harsh on us. What was best for me leading up to that was the link-up play and the number of players involved in all of that, with Turnbull, Yang, O, Scales, McGregor, Greg Taylor, all involved and on the high press to make that chance happen. So that was very telling, and there was a lot to be very sort of pleased about with what we were seeing before the incident itself. But I think we don't need to feel too hard done by that one, but maybe some other incidents in the game. Okay, well, let's talk about another one of those then. The red card for James Brown, who we highlighted on Thursday. So that was the very first James Brown play on words that you heard, I suspect, was last week. But everyone's been at it since. Dano, what did you think of that initial decision and then VAR turning the yellow red?
Man, I mean, I'm thankful Yang is not hurt, to be honest. I mean, that was a bad, boots on the ankle, straight into him, foul. I don't really agree with VAR changing those type of decisions. I mean, it gets too technical. And I mean, the whole problem with VAR, whether you're talking about Scotland the world over, is just the goddamn time wasting that goes on with the decisions. And he's walking over to the monitor. I think he could kind of feel hard done, but it was a red card foul for sure. But the ref missed it. I don't know. Does VAR really help in that situation? It's kind of a question that's bothered me and a lot of other people. I mean, let the game play on, to be perfectly honest. That's how I feel about it.
It's funny to hear that from an American who's used to sports that take several hours to play out, with loads of time wasting and hot dog eating and performances on the field of play.
This is why I love football, because there's no commercials in the middle of it. I cannot stand watching American sports anymore, to be perfectly honest. I used to love watching baseball, football, all that type of stuff. It is way, way too much time wasting. Yeah, there's a lot of breaks in play, but the goddamn ads, man, like just get them out of my face. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, they're taking away the best part of the game, which is, the continuation of play, which is, how everything just flows with football. So I don't know. There's got to be some kind of improvement to the system because it does drag on and on and on sometimes.
Well, the improvement in the system is going to be the refs, right? And being able to call that decision straight away. So, I mean, I think I have to say VAR came in and did its job at that point because I would have been hugely annoyed had that been allowed to pass. And if you look at where his position was, he was right in front of it. He wasn't at a difficult angle. He wasn't blocked. He wasn't viewed. And he gave a yellow. If you saw a yellow, how did you not see it was a red? It was impossible not to give an immediate red for that. That was the problem for that one for me. And VAR coming in, I agree. There's too much time seems to be coming in. 6 minutes in the first half added. So get to these decisions in the right way the first time with no ambiguity. How that was called as a foul, as a yellow, and not a red immediately. It was clear. That's a career ender.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is it the hold on? No, hold
lucky.
on. Devil's advocate is back in the room to try and present a little bit the other side. I'm not saying this is what I think, but just for the sake of the conversation, James Brown, he's going to clear the ball, and Yang nips in on his blind side, and so it wasn't a high-footed tackle in that sense. He was swinging for the ball. And you saw him saying to the referee, look, I didn't even see him. And I believe him that he didn't see him. So, and this is the thing about VAR. Everything's reduced to a still image. And a still image is not the reality of the game of football. The still image looks like a shocking tackle, get him off the field of play, could have broken his ankle, horrific. But, the still removes the context of what was happening. It removes the pace of movement of people's body parts. He didn't go flying in Vinnie Jones style with his foot up. Rodgers compared it to Holmes' tackle that got him sent off in the Champions League, where he was like coming in like a train, sliding with his foot up and got sent off. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't that. The pace of the contact was minimal. And had it been a sort of more of a home style, Vinnie Jones style tackle, he could have snapped the ankle. But you saw the ankle moved a little bit and then he went down. And, I just think you can't reduce incidents to a still image. I think it removes so much of the good sense of the game. I'm not saying it wasn't a red, just saying devil's advocate. I can understand why it was given yellow, and if VAR hadn't have changed it to a red, I think I would have understood that. David, you said you'd be furious if that hadn't been changed to a red.
Because if you're going to talk about stills, okay, let's go back to the still moment when the foot connects with the player there and he still pushes through on that. There's some distance travelled. I know it's a small area, but if you're taking a player down like that, in that way, committed to it, and you know that you've already hit that player, and yet you continue through with that force, that's dangerous play. You're a professional footballer, has to be able to come out of those situations. It's dangerous play.
Yeah, I know. Whether he saw him or not, it's dangerous play. Do you remember there was a game in the Champions League, I think, United, where Nani went up for a big high ball and he sort of jumped up, and a guy appeared from nowhere. His head appeared from nowhere to connect with the underside of his boot. He had no idea what was happening, but it was dangerous play. So that was that incident.
Got to get on the good foot, James Brown. You know what I'm saying? I mean, got to live up to your namesake.
That was your one. The other one, what did the commentator say? He doesn't feel good right now.
Come on,
I knew that he would say that.
Got to go deeper in the discog than that. I mean, that's like the whitest James Brown ever got, man.
Okay, so that decision was possibly the most important decision of the day, removing a player from the game, and that one went our way, whatever way, regardless of what you think of the decision. All right, One that certainly didn't go our way was Maeda's offside for what would have been an O goal, Dano. Now, I think this is really the biggest decision of the night, the most annoying one. Do you agree?
Easily. I mean, when they're showing the two pegs, like the blue and the red peg, to show that he's offside, I mean, I don't know. That's one of those moments where you're just like, do they need to change the offside rule? Because this is getting pretty ridiculous. And I'm sure in a weekend, there's at least 10 or 20 examples of this stuff where it's just too microscopic and too, I don't know. You're just getting into this minutia with players and motion and movement. It's another example of VAR not kind of sitting right with me. Plus, it was just a beautiful piece of build-up, man. It was an awesome goal. So, yeah, I don't know. Didn't like it. I'm sure most people didn't like it. I saw tons of people on Twitter and whatever just getting the still once again of,
the still was ludicrous. The camera angle was ludicrous. It was the wrong frame because it already left his ball. We've all seen that.
Right.
We all know this.
Right.
But you've no way of knowing if nobody knows if it was offside. We don't know.
No, exactly. I don't know when it's that microscopically close. It's just so ridiculous. I don't know what other way to describe it, but it was great play, great ball from Bernardo, and then just the cross.
How good would it have been for O's confidence to have gotten that goal? David, were you greatly aggrieved, swearing at your telly?
Well, see, again, I go to this point about VAR and the purpose of VAR. I think it is to deal with the minutiae elements of it, not these big calls. For me, the first one is a red card, an obvious red card in my book. But when it looks to these sort of precision calls, then VAR needs to be able to call that correctly. And from what I see of the still, the ball has left Bernardo beautifully, releasing Maeda to be able to then cross into O, and it would have been an absolute talk about goal for that reason. Now, if we're saying now that, well, we don't know whether or not it was offside or not because we don't know what judgment is being called upon and which frame and which reference point is being done, then VAR is seriously flawed. Again, we seem to have had a recent incident where an idea of a foul being given or not being given, the reason for it seems to change as well. Now, these incidents can't keep repeating. And never mind the build-up or sort of the added time, the distraction from play, the distraction of a beautiful goal. We need to understand, and so for me, we need to start hearing recordings of what the decision process has been. We need that transparency for it. If you're going to record and you've got pictures, why would anybody be in any concern or doubt about having this data? It's just data then. Why can't we be at that situation? And then we can all go away from these frustration points that says we're not clear about exactly how we're being judged on this, because just a little too many seem not to be getting called correctly. And we know from Liverpool, for example, I'm not using that as the best comparison with us, it certainly can go badly wrong.
Here's an interesting point from Frank Brennan. Absolutely, Dano. VAR was only ever intended to rectify glaring and obvious mistakes and completely not for microscopic analysis of minute detail that only provides inconclusive evidence. FFS. Right. So, yeah, I know what you're saying. No matter what way you cut it, it's not working very well. It's really not. It's a disaster. So, is it time for the board to, compile a dossier and say, WTF is going on? So that sounded like your.
So that's a good. Well, so no, I mean it's a very good point by Frank makes there. Then, right? So if we are in doubt about what we think VAR is intended to be used for, then we all agreed during Ange's time that his biggest complaint was the time it was taken to get these decisions. Just go on, let's move, whatever the decision comes, right? So he knew that there was a bad implementation of it. Now then, why don't we go through a process of restart to say this is when we're going to be used. Here are the parameters by which we'll make these calls, and if it's for the big calls only, the glaring obvious ones that get shouted about, and there's a fourth, fifth sort of independent adjudicator to come in and make those calls, then let it be about that. But clearly, there's not a joined up thinking here on how VAR is to be used. And clearly from these incidents, it's not just the big calls then. That's not what's happening. So inconsistency as well. So if it's to be the big calls, I'll go with that. That's fine. But let's have it consistently then.
Mhm.
Right. It
All right,
seems
well, look,
like
let's get.
yeah,
Oh,
it
go
seems
ahead.
like it seems like the criteria just is not set. I mean, you also see a variance in usages between leagues and all this kind of stuff. So it's definitely morphed into this situation where it is being used for every little microscopic detail going on in the game, and it's been, I don't know, it's been bad, to be perfectly honest. Terrible.
Well, let's get back to the details of this particular game. The last thing that happened in the first half was David Turnbull's goal just before halftime. Dano, how did you feel going in 1-up at halftime? Relieved?
Yeah, definitely takes a lot of weight off the shoulders. And how many goals is that for Turnbull now as a Celt? 28, 29, something like that? I mean, those are pretty impressive numbers. The guy can just boot it from the top of the box. Like, I mean, he can just score goals from out there. He's dangerous, man. But yeah, huge goal, especially against Laidlaw, who was in the zone all game. We should have won that game 8-0 or something without him playing the way he was. I mean, we were absolutely smashing it at goal all game, and he was making just spectacular saves. So to get that past Laidlaw during that first half was massive.
Yeah, we talked about the goalkeeper after the last game as well, having had a good game. I hope that doesn't become a thing that, after Celtic games, you always point to what a good game the keeper had. Maybe our finishing should be a bit more clinical. Or
everybody's aiming for you. Everybody's trying to have their best game when they're playing the champions, so it shouldn't be unexpected.
And then the champions went on to win the game, which wasn't unexpected, against 10 men with 2 goals in the second half. David, the first one was Luis Palma. How much of a peach was that?
Well, that was a thing of beauty, wasn't it? That was what we were talking about in the KLCC WhatsApp group. Was that? So I had to get a copy of that and just watch it over and over. It was a beauty, a thing of beauty to watch. And he set up play as well. Don't forget he crossed in for the other goal as well. So I think what happened with Palma. So I think Turnbull, for me, did a really great job, very composed in his goal take. I think his contribution was great. It was workmanlike, creative as well. And I think for any of those rotated players came on, I think they all pretty much did really good jobs. But there was very definitely in the 60th minute when we made those changes, a change in dynamic of the team. There was an increase in capability, and Palmer was just running them ragged in my view. The confidence that he comes in with now is incredible. I hope it continues. I hope he keeps going at this. But what we're starting to see, if he can pull off goals like that and assists like that, and I think someone sent me some stats as well, and I think his stats are better than Jota's in the same sort of game periods as well for goals and assists. So
yeah,
maybe this is, so yeah, you just want to see that absolute composure. What a beautiful strike. The way he lays himself up for it, he's no rush to take it. And there was no chance for the goalkeeper. It was just wonderful.
And then Palmer's assist for wee Jamesy Forrest.
Yeah.
Jamesy and his perfect set of teeth. Did that give you great pleasure?
Yeah, I mean, certainly Palma's goal gave me more, but that's the second game where Palma has had a goal and an assist, I believe. He might have 3 games where he's had a goal and an assist. He's just on fire right now, and his outside shots from the top of the box have been a thing of beauty. Just and like we've talked about before, not that fast, not a pacey guy, but the trickery on the ball and how he composes himself when he's over there in possession is
he just needs a yard, doesn't he? Just a little drop of the shoulder, a bit of space, and then he unleashes. So he doesn't have to beat players to be incredibly effective.
Just see ya. Yeah.
I'm wondering, is now a good time for a little musical break in honor of Luis Palma? Not too sure about this one.
Oh, yes.
Not too sure about this one.
Frank, sign down.
Any of them.
Well, this is in honor of Luis Palma in the style of Boney M. So here we go.
En español, ¿sí?
There you go.
That's my favorite so far.
Perfecto.
What?
¿Sí?
That's my favorite. No, that's my favorite.
I thought that was a bit of an album filler myself, but
No. That's a #1 Christmas there.
I never knew they were German, though. Yeah, I just kind of looked that up. I was like, German group. I never knew that.
Do you know what the tune was?
I don't know the title. What was it?
The title of that song is, in fact, Belfast. They wrote a song about Belfast. The people are leaving, and it's a country that's changing and everything. So you should check that out. It's a good tune. Dear, oh dear, Frank Brennan lowering the tone here. Dear, oh dear. What else was I going to say about that? Oh, did you notice that it went at one stage? It went Palma, ma pal. So that's a bit of Scottish dialect thrown in there, mixing Boney M with Unhunger and surname.
It's just
it works.
A lot of levels.
So
a lot of levels. Multilingual. I mean, you're killing it, Gav.
All right. Okay, let's get back to business. I forgot to do this, by the way.
Business. A little bit of an American accent there, too. Yeah, we're really...
Okay, so we're talking about Ross County. We haven't quite finished. Next, we're going to move on to rivalry welcome. We're going to talk about if Rangers are getting stronger and is that a bad thing necessarily. Number 3, we're going to discuss the mattress makers. I'm sure you both know who that's referring to. Athletico Madrid.
Yeah.
And then, very good. And then we're on to the socials after that. Sorry, I stepped over your Spanish skills there.
No, you've totally outdone anything I can offer. Trust me. The Korean has totally erased my Spanish skills. Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to talk about with regards to the Ross County game is Turnbull. Do we think he's off in January? And do you blame him if he wants to scarper? David?
Well, I wouldn't blame him if he felt, because I know that, the finger in the ear stuff about, he's obviously getting criticism for sort of disappearing and having inconsistency in his play, maybe not the fastest, the highest level, etc. So he'll hear that. And it's going to be tough for a young man who wants to just play football and get out there. I probably argue at this this point that if we need squad rotation, Turnbull is someone that you want to play against Ross Counties and others in these matches to give people rest, and he will score goals, and he consistently scores goals for us at the moment. So I think he probably gets over the piece. I think he probably gets more criticism than he deserves because he's scoring goals, right? Just look at it. That's what he's been doing. So he probably does deserve to feel a bit aggrieved if he's off, but I don't know that he will, because my feeling is that he impresses in training. I think he impresses the other players in training. I think he impresses Rodgers as well. The only thing that bothered me recently was the finger in the ear thing, because Scales was getting hammered for the longest period of time. He just got his head down, got on with developing himself as a player, getting back into the team, establishing himself and saying, no one moves me now. Turnbull could do the same, just with that concentrated effort. So I hope he's not off, actually. I hope he's not. There may be other players, although Forrest scores, but I'd probably have said maybe Forrest has come to the end of his career, etc. There's maybe others before him. I think, yeah.
Yeah, you hope he's not off, because he's a useful tool to have in our armory. And as you said there, against certain teams, he's even more useful. But is that going to be enough for a player like him, Dano? Is it going to be enough for him to think, oh, they're going to just wheel me out against St. Johnson and Ross County and all these low blocks? Apologies for using that term.
If he's thinking that, he's probably going to want to leave. I think he is a better player than that, and he's come in for a lot of criticism, which I don't think has been very fair. I mean, for me, like, his positioning and footwork can be extremely weak sometimes, and like where he is on the field versus how the game is flowing and all that. But when he has the ball and we're in a threatening position, he's a good guy to have out there. The criticisms, yeah, I kind of understand them, but they're way overblown. But if he is thinking that, he'll be off. Like, he'll probably ask for a transfer. But I mean, he might wait it out until, the summer or something like that. But if he's thinking he's not getting utilized, I mean, he is a player that deserves to get, first team football pretty regularly. I would say maybe not at Celtic. I would say we have better options.
I think there's more of a player in there as well. I think he'll probably be getting some focused attention as well in terms of development as a player. And we've seen that as well with players running over to celebrate about being coached. Who was it they did it the other day in the game to go to?
Ran over.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that going on. So I don't think he'll be off, and I think there's more to come.
I think he.
Yeah, I also don't think he's like a selfish player like that. He doesn't strike me as like, well, I'm not getting playing time, I'm off, type of thing. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I like Turnbull, man. I think he does add an element to our attack that we generally don't have otherwise.
I suspect he might just feel like he would be more valued elsewhere for what he brings.
Do you mean that's game time, or you mean some of the criticism?
Well, just generally, the general view of him and how his career has gone since he's come to Celtic. You might sort of feel like he's not really pushing forward as much as he should. O'Reilly in the post-match interview saying this guy's too good not to be playing, and he's thinking, well, I agree with that. I should be playing, and not just against the shit teams who are all behind the ball. So
you're apologizing for lower block, huh?
Yeah.
Really involved there.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you think that's worthy of pulling me up on, then the next topic is certainly one that we might come in for some abuse on, depending on what we say here. But I thought it would be worth spending 10 or 15 minutes just discussing Rangers for a second. And whether we welcome a stronger Rangers, which may seem like a crazy question to ask, but really the question is whether we would welcome a credible rival, one that really pushes us, threatens our dominance. Could be anyone. Maybe in the future it could be someone else, Hibs or whatever, if they get a new owner in, or what all this talk comes to fruition. But at this time, Rangers are the most likely. And I suppose there's two reasons why this might be something that we would welcome. The intangible idea that in any competitive environment, you want a strong rival pushing you to the very end. We all remember league campaigns that go down to the wire, how exciting that is. And to win it is, a rush like no other. And that hasn't happened for a long time. And then there's the second point is just a very real belief that our board are happy to finish just ahead of Rangers. As long as we're ahead of Rangers, they're happy. And, if Rangers are crap, then we are, by that definition, crapper than we could be. So let's deal with those two. The idea of a strong rival just on its own. David, you've been a Celtic fan for many years. You remember those ones that have gone down to the wire.
Yeah.
They don't know where the trophy's going to go and how important those Glasgow derbies are at the end of the season when everything's on the line. Do you miss that?
Yes, of course. Who doesn't want that as a football fan? Who doesn't want that rivalry? Who doesn't want that competition excitement to look forward? I mean, regardless of what I think of it, because since 2012 I've had a very different view of what I want a rival to look like and behave like. And I think part of all of this discussion is coloured by what took place during those times, right? Financial fair play as well. So there's a number of things that probably influence what people's opinions are. But if you're talking from a purely footballing point of view, who wouldn't want that chase? And even to this day, I can tell you from a KLCC point of view, when we've got the Glasgow Derby on, that's when we get people coming in. So people, obviously, from numbers, if you look at many of the CSEs around the world, then it's a ticket-only event to go into a CSE, never mind the game. That excitement absolutely exists, and any form of them who exists. And my personal belief is that they liquidated, I believe it to be a new team, but it's the same support and it's the same mentality, and it is, they're still in Glasgow. So I would welcome any form of challenge. My question is what the impact is on the wider game as well. Because the wider game has suffered, I think, since 2012 as a consequence of many of the things that went on during that period. I don't think we've got time to go into it. So maybe I'll stop rambling, but that's kind of my initial response to that, Gav.
Yeah. And Rogers' first time around, Dano, one of the main criticisms of that was that he didn't have any meaningful rival. And it's hard to argue against that. How much of a different situation are we in now? I mean, do we expect Clement to do a better job than the motor mouth with no substance? That's for sure. But would you trade a bit of comfort for excitement in the title race?
I'd rather not, but I think it would be better for the overall game. I think the problem in Scotland, though, is is Glasgow's dominance versus the rest of the league. I want to see somebody else rise up, a la Alex Ferguson back in the early 80s or something, and give a challenge. That is how Scotland can really add to the resume for the league overall. I think the old, the so-called old firm thing cuts both ways. It makes both Celtic and Rangers complacent if they're above the other one, and it makes the rest of the league kind of feel like it's just a fait accompli to be behind those two. So it does create this overload at the top, which just kind of weighs down the game, I think, in Scotland. I mean, financially, any other way you want to talk about it. I think it creates this weird complacency that cuts both ways with all the teams. So I would like to see someone else do better and maybe replace Rangers. I mean, we all have a deep distaste for that team, but them being better is better for the game. I would just like to see a third or fourth team, maybe a new owner come in or Hibs or whatever, and start to make the league overall more competitive, because then everything will be better for everybody in the league. So, but keep holding your breath on that. What, it's been 4 decades. So
Yeah, sure. And it's most likely going to be Rangers. Now, what about the other point about if you accept that our board are perfectly happy just to finish ahead of Rangers and simply be in the Champions League, then surely you must welcome a stronger Rangers. That's the only way they're going to be motivated to improve us as a team and a squad, David, if our number 1 position is under threat and we have to be better to beat them.
Yeah.
A dangerous Rangers will help us do better in the Champions League. Do you agree with that, David?
Yeah, I mean, Peter Law, when he was CEO, made 2 different statements at different times about it. First time that Rangers were being liquidated, he said, "Oh, that's us lost however many millions it was, 10 million, 50 million? Can't remember the figure." And then later, as the story develops, he says, we don't plan or based on anybody else in the city. We plan only for us. And that was probably motivated by the idea that we may be left alone in the league and must then look to. So it could be the argument that says without them, we need to go to Europe because it is the only true funding source for us. TV is not going to follow anything that doesn't have an old firm in it from that perspective. So from a money perspective, there's that to be considered as well. I don't think so. One level down, you come to the manager. I cannot imagine that Rodgers is there not to go in and do well in Europe, and I think he sees this as a true path to going into Europe. And it could be that all we're experiencing is the sort of financial prudence of the highest form from the board that says, we won't overspend. This is a model. It's worked for us. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Rangers or otherwise. We're not going to get involved in all of this. Therefore, Brendan Rodgers, you must develop players. And this is the budgets and you are able to work with them. Whether or not they explicitly have it as a financial model, I think is a risky one, because if you look at what the model was for the old Rangers, was to spend so that they could do well in Europe, and that's the gamble they took, and it didn't pay off. So our board would only be too mindful of that as well. So one sort of trick strategy from a board from a financial point of view is not a smart one. And I need to give them a little bit more credit than just that.
Mm-hmm. Here's another interesting point from Frank. There's also the fact that Rodgers has no experience of fighting tooth and nail in a very closely fought for league title race. And Frank's making the point earlier that, look, the title race is back on. We are in a fight now for the title, he reckons. Other people disagree, I think. And he also points out that this year's title race is worth 60 million quid to the winner. So the stakes is high, as they say.
De La Soul reference.
You get me,
Well
Danny?
done.
Yeah.
Well done, my friend. I mean, one of my favorite albums of all time. I think that's a very good point to be made. I mean, the league title being worth 60 million quid is a big pot that we're not usually dealing with. I mean, it's an eventuality, you go through the Champions League the next year or whatever, but it's massive. I mean, compared to whatever pittance you're usually winning when you're not going straight into the Champions League, like before Russia did their ridiculous thing in Ukraine. So, that's a massive point that I think would maybe light a fire under the board at either club. But we'll see what happens. It is interesting to talk about, though. And a better Rangers and a closer title race means better revenue in TV. It means better everything. But I think it doesn't.
I mean, it's all, as long as they don't win, as long as we still win in the end. That's the main thing.
Yeah,
I'll take
as long
a closer
as they're
title race any day of the week, as long as we win it.
Exactly. Yeah, as long as they're still under our boot. Yeah, you're fine. Okay, we win by 2 points. Okay, that was fun. Yay. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think they're stronger. I'm not nervous.
All right, let's talk about that. Go on.
No.
I don't think they're stronger. He's getting a tune out of some of these players. They're settling in. He's got a system. He's clear on what he wants them to do. He's told them to jump in the cryogenic chamber that's been sitting idle for a year.
Right. He's got the tube of fluid. He's having him sit in during off days or whatever. He's definitely a better manager than shit talker Ally McBeal or whatever his name was. I mean, he was like, if you looked at Rangers and how they were using their players when Beal was there, you were just like, what is he doing, man? Like the way he ran formations, the positions he put players in, it just didn't make sense. Clement, I think, definitely has his stuff together a lot more than Beal, obviously, and they are playing well. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't see them making the jump. I mean, the golf is admittedly pretty big.
Well, they
Even
spend
still,
money. I don't think they're going to spend money. I don't think they have money.
they've spent
and that's
all
not a
their
dig.
money. Yeah.
I think they have, and I don't think that's going to happen in January. And I think we definitely are going to improve our squad in January. I think that's
I
definitely.
think we're going to
I mean,
spend money in January.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
What
think
makes
so.
you think that? Because what we need in January is what we needed in the summer, and it didn't
Yeah.
happen then.
No, but I think there was a timing issue of when Ange left. Rogers came in, chasing after players, getting them tied down. I think there was an issue there that probably prevented Brendan truly getting his signings in. I suspect that. I don't know that, but I suspect that to be the case. So I think the January transfer window will show whether or not he has intent. So I think, well, he'll have money available. At least we know that we've got, we have budget to be able to be spent. We're certainly cash rich. And I think we'll probably bring in 2-3 players in January. I mean, it's a difficult window traditionally to get players and bring in, right? But I suspect 2 to 3 players coming in.
In the key positions that we've been harping on about for ages.
Well, I'd like to think so. Yeah, I'd like to think so. And I think we'll probably look for another striker as well.
And yet there are reports about more Korean projects. Dano, you're a Korean project. What do you think about that? You're our Korean project.
I'm a ongoing, really long-term Korean project, so I do have sympathy. Yeah, I'm a fan. I've talked about it here on the show. I'm a fan of the project players. People poo-poo it and they want like a proven commodity, but do you want the Ajax model or do you not? Do we want to go back to this kind of unrealistic, like,
yeah? Well, we've got a
Martin
ton of them
O'Neill
now,
era,
so,
you know.
You must be pleased with the amount of projects. Our project cup overfloweth.
Yeah, and it's good. They're all right at this really good age to start developing players and get them time. I'm a big believer in youth in football. I'm a big Matt Busby, Jock Steen philosophy of giving young players, get them blooded in the team. So buying these 20, 21-year-old players, I think this should be the model. I mean, we can make good money off the sales. That's going to be proven with guys like O'Reilly and all that kind of stuff down the road. So I think this is the way to go, man. O'Reilly was a project player. Jota was a project player. CCV was a project player. Look at how they're playing now. So I love it. Bring more in, man. Here we go. I'm fine with it.
Pete McGee here. Guys, it's doing my nut in all these pods clashing time-wise. I don't know who we clash with. It depends where you are. We haven't changed our time. I haven't. None of us have changed our time, the three of us. The time has changed in the UK. I don't know.
I thought the other pods were on like later in the day, weren't they? I don't know.
Yeah,
Axom and stuff like that.
Know.
They're like lunchtime type of thing. Yeah.
So.
Because I usually catch them, like after we're off. But I don't know. Like I said, the medieval clock trick. It creates confusion.
Well, we value your comments indeed, Pete McGee.
Yeah, thanks, Pete, man.
And Michael Ross, who asks, who would poo-poo a project? All right.
I like that Pete's actually decided on coming to us if there is a clash happening. Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, man.
Well, there may be some that you can maybe draw your own conclusions from that comment.
I was watching Down Under as well. We're on the Celtic way now as well. Oh, it's got to be the time because they usually were on before us. Sorry, Pete.
Well, look, we don't sort of pay too much attention to what everyone else is doing. We do it at a time that is suits most of us. We're all over the world. It's very hard to organize, and there's really a sweet spot for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the other two have finished. Pete McGee says that's why he showed up late. Cheek of him.
You're here,
Oh.
Pete. That's all that matters. You're here.
Yeah, man.
You're
And
here.
you know,
Tell
I mean,
them
they
to
must,
change their time because they're it's much easier for them to change than us.
well, they must have went
All right.
overtime or something. What's going on? You know, I mean, keep the schedule.
Well,
boys.
to save us going on overtime, let's move on to our next subject, which is the mattress makers. Now, I thought I would put it to you, why is that section called that? And neither of you would know, but Dano, it seems, knows why I'm using that term. Dano, take it away, Dano.
Los Colchoneros, I believe it's because there was a big mattress industry when the club was founded back in the day in Madrid, and especially in that part of town, which was more industrial. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. I remember watching a big deep dive on Atleti and Real playing in the Champions League final and all that, that this guy who does a channel called Ballon on YouTube. And it went into the history of the rivalry and how they got their name and all that. Yeah,
Well,
it's a very distinctive
my
nickname.
extensive research, I can tell you, Dano, has revealed that Los Colchoneros, the mattress makers, is the nickname of Atletico Madrid because their first team stripes are the same colors as traditional mattresses in Spain at a certain era. So everyone at home has got red and white striped mattresses.
Interesting color choice for a mattress, Billy. Candy cane mattresses.
Yeah. It is
What's with
odd.
what's with the bear on their club crest? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I
it's
haven't
sort of an
looked
apple
into
tree.
that.
It's really
Must look into that.
It's really kind of weird. But
Well,
Athletic.
let's talk about the game. Will we spring a surprise? Oh no, these are hilarious bed puns. Let me rephrase that. So, mattresses. Will we spring a surprise, or will they lay down a marker by giving us a good seeing to, David?
I think they're going to lay down a marker. Now, I don't know that they will. I think we will walk away with some integrity, but I don't think we're going to walk away with any points, and I'm going to lose myself here. Excuse me.
Oh dear, the world is falling apart. Strange Love coming in with a similar.
Yeah. Certainly, if they go across town, the Bernabeu, woo, they have not had a good time of it.
Dano, have you been doing lots of work on team news and injuries and what the latest story is?
With Atleti, not really. But it's like I said about the group generally. I don't think there's a ton of difference between any of these teams in the group. I think we can play with them, but going to the Metropolitano and winning, that is a tall order, my friend. I mean, if we can come away with that point, I'd be feeling like $1 million, but doubtful, Henry. Doubtful.
What are you expecting, David, in terms of team selection and tactics?
So I think we're going to see our sort of stablest first team. So Maeda, Kyogo, would they play O? I'm not sure. Maybe he's done enough. At the back, you're going to see Scales, CCV, McGregor in the middle. You're going to see, who else are we going to see? O'Reilly. I think these are the players that were probably Palmer.
Yeah, I'd say.
For sure.
I don't think O's going to make it. Do you think O's going to make it, Dano?
I don't know. You know, I'm a big fan also of the 4-4-2. So, yeah, put two strikers up there. Go at it. But no, the big question is who's good. I mean, Hatati's out for the long term. So do you play Turnbull against Atleti? Do you play Bernardo? I like how he's looked. That's the big question, I think, with the lineup. I mean, you're going to see AJ, Taylor, everybody else, the usual suspects, but that's the big question mark position for sure. I would go with Bernardo. I like what I'm seeing from him, and get
especially
some.
in Europe.
Yes.
Let's hear
He's
some
got something about him.
commenters giving us their predicted scores. By the way, if you could do that while we're chatting here. Yeah, you were saying, Dano, Bernardo.
I like Bernardo in Hatati's place. I just don't think Turnbull's got the speed and the positioning to handle Atleti, and I think Bernardo's got a little more in his locker in that department.
So he was taken off. Do you think he was subbed just with that in mind to keep him less of either pressure? Maybe.
Yeah,
anyway, not much time, right? Not much time, but he got a rest.
Right. Yeah, I think Rodgers has been seeing something with this kid, and especially since we have the option to buy at the end of the season, he's kind of liking that. So yeah, I'm seeing something from him, especially with Hatati out. So
I'm gonna die.
I'm gonna put you on mute because there's always a lot of noise when you have to do this.
I'm just glad it's not a wall falling or like a
our world is falling apart.
Cardboard 3D printed thing, man. That would be a big.
All right, so I only see one prediction in the comments. No one's playing ball. Street Shouter is going for a 2-1 to Celtic.
Yeah, baby. I'm gonna go. I think it'll be close. 2-1 Atleti.
David.
I'm doing it, Jerry. 7-0 Celtic. No, I think let's be optimistic. Let's go in. Let's see Celtic can come out with something. I'm not sure I believe this, but let's go for 2-1 Celtic.
Well,
why not?
I don't believe it, and I wasn't optimistic in the last show, and I went for 2-0 to Athletico.
Yeah.
Martin. I wonder, is that our Martin? It says 2-2 each.
I'm pretty sure it was Martin K earlier checked in.
There was a Martin K earlier. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be our fourth member or not.
What's up, Kaiser? Where you at? Miss you.
Frank's not too happy with the majority of our predictions, I think. He'll be happy with mine, surely.
No,
it's a different Martin. Martin saying, "Hello, guys. First time I've seen you." So
okay, yeah.
It's a pretty sure fresh Martin. Guy. Welcome.
Good I think our guy was in here earlier for sure, though.
And Michael Ross is going for a very conservative result. 6-4 thriller. Hugo O'Reilly and a Scales hat trick. I wonder what odds you would get on that.
Hat trick. Woo! Yeah, if you actually bet that, could you imagine? Be a millionaire, man.
Right. Well, I need to call up the share screen so we can have a look at today's. What's going on? You guys want to talk amongst yourselves?
Coffee talk.
What time is it on at your time, the game? So I need to make sure that I can get up and I'm doing a quick check what time it is for me in Malaysia. That is at 4 a.m. I will be up watching that. What about you, Dano?
I think it would be on at 5 then, since that seems like an hour later. I think you guys are an hour behind us.
Yeah. So I think 3-4 o'clock's always, I find it. 5 I would manage. That would just I'd be getting up a wee bit early. That's okay.
Yeah, I'll be watching it in the morning with my phone off.
Yeah.
I'll be avoiding the news and then trying to watch it without knowing what the heck's going on.
Yeah, I typically do that, but 5, I think an early 5 a.m. wake up is doable. 4 is kind of like, okay, but I did catch the Athletico game. But like Lazio, I watched later. I just didn't pay attention to the score at all. Just kind of la-la-la'd my way through the day and got home from work and watched it. But
there's Martin K coming in with 2-0. Martin K, are you someone that we all know?
Are you the Kaiser?
Let's
Kaiser
have a look then at our social media recommendations. This is David's.
Yes. Sound column. The only thing missing here was a couple of inches of drill coming down the fourth. I mean, I'm not going to suggest for a minute that he was saying, see there, I took care of that for you. But a more mistimed smile and nod and wink I have never seen, I don't think.
And it's the nature of it as well. It's the
well.
sort of the half smile and the half nod,
half
the subtlety
nod.
of it. It's almost an attempt to disguise, but
Yeah.
not really.
But I wouldn't, not for one, to suggest any sort of.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
horrible, isn't it? It needs some sinister music to go along with it.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
All right, on to my recommendation. My recommendation is this: the Blind Boy podcast. I don't know if you know who this guy is, but there was a band a few years ago called the Rubber Bandits out of Ireland, and two fellas had plastic bags on their head to preserve their anonymity, and they made daft songs and got into the charts and stuff, like back in the, when was it, the 2000s or something. But Blind Boy's a very interesting fella. He's like an artist, and he's a tremendous storyteller, and his podcasts are full of all sorts of interesting research that he does into the history of doorknobs and things that sound incredibly dull. But then by the time you finish the journey with him, you're fascinated. You've learned a load. And his most recent episode I thought was very interesting. It was called The Return to Yurty Ahern's Couch. Now, that doesn't mean much to anyone, but it came out on the 1st of November. Half of it is him talking about where he used to go and meditate on the banks of the River Shannon, and he communed with an otter who he named Yurty Ahern. But the second half is all about not just the parallels between the Palestinian people and the Irish people and their experiences of politically what has happened to them, colonization, but the very real shared elements to the two stories about the black and tans, about your man Balfour, about what people said about the establishment of Israel at the time, likening it to Ulster and all this kind of stuff. Really, really fascinating. So I recommend that one individual podcast for if you're interested in hearing all that kind of stuff, but also his podcast generally is really superb.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
And on to Dano for a change of tone. Talk
Yeah,
to us.
this is the Celtic. I'm not sure if this is connected with the club. I believe it is, but it's the Celtic Korean Instagram. So, I mean, nowadays on Instagram or wherever, there's an instant translate button that you can hit at least on the cell phone version of the app, where you can kind of keep up with what are Korean fans thinking about Celtic and what's going through their heads with scoring the goal or whatever. And they put up a lot of content. It's very good. So
fantastic. Will you be keeping an eye on that for us?
Yeah, I'm already following that. Yeah.
And doubtless you're going to do some exciting features with Korean fans at some stage. Give us a little insight into what the view of Celtic is from Korea.
Yeah, we're going to the Gwangju FC road game against Jeonbuk in a couple weeks after the international break is over, and then we're going to the Gwangju FC final home game after that. So I'm going to do some interviews with some fans, see what they know about Celtic, what they think about Celtic, and all that kind of stuff in the lead up to the game. So we'll be getting there kind of early for both games. So that should be fun. Yeah.
Should be a lot of fun. All right. Well, look, thank you to everyone in the comments for your fun and games. It's always great. And welcome to the two Martins, who may both be newbies. Apparently, David's electricity went off, which is kind of par for the course when you live in Malaysia.
Does that happen quite often? Yeah.
Well, more often than you'd care to experience. I have this like a battery thing, like a pack that we all plug a fan into and plug our phones into and set about,
generator.
Yeah, when the electricity goes off.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have the fuse in the apartment go out every so often, but you just kind of refire up the box.
No, this is like blackouts, regional blackouts. Well, anyway, we're going to go on a regional blackout. Sorry that we're clashing with others, but I think you know what to do. It's a Celtic world. You're part of it. You can watch those other ones on catch up. Come here for the crack. For now, we're done for today. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dano. And we'll
Aye.
see you all on Thursday.
Hail, hail.
Bye for now.